Welcome in Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, right now a member of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee, who is perhaps joining us from somewhere inside Fort Pelosi. Congressman, are you inside Fort Pelosi right now?
I am not inside Fort Pelosi,
Okay.
but I am in the D.C. area. John, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate it. And as always, just call me Guy, please.
I can't. I'll try. But I just have this reflexive need to call you guys members of Congress, congressmen. But are you worried about any breaches or militia groups attacking you or your office or anywhere on Capitol Hill today?
But let's remember a few things. First off, this is the people's house. That building belongs to the people. And if you look at it now, it's actually heartbreaking. There's more security around the Capitol complex than I believe there was around my forward operating base in Baghdad. We're just short of the cement T-walls that you had in Iraq. But let me be clear about something. I have condemned all violence all summer long, anything that is the violence, activism that leads to violence. The left, however, has a glaring hypocrisy. You know, where was the National Guard when Antifa was burning down Portland? They're still rioting in Portland. Where were they when Chaz was extorting businesses, when the leaders of Chaz were extorting businesses in downtown
Congressman,
Seattle?
we know where they were. These local officials, they don't want this presence, despite the fact that it would make their communities safer. They do not seem to want to have the National Guard there. We talked about this yesterday in Minnesota, where they're going to have this trial. They want it when it's convenient for them, when it can be used for effect. Because, look, are we going to shut the government down and deploy the National Guard every time Nancy Pelosi and Democrats want to push something like HR1?
Exactly. When the ruling elite feel threatened, the walls come up. They call in the National Guard. They call the police. But if you're on a border town and you want a wall between your town and Mexico, you can't have that wall. If you want a police force in your suburban town because you feel threatened, they want to defund those police. And if you're a small business owner who had one of your businesses destroyed, remember there was $2 billion with a B, $2 billion worth of damage done with the Antifa riots all summer long. If you're one of those small business owners, you didn't have the chance to decide if you were coming back to work or not. Nancy Pelosi now is making the decisions of when we come to work and when we don't because of these perceived threats. It's interesting to note the Senate is still in. But John, if I could just say one thing, the way the troops are being treated is absolutely disgusting. They were sleeping in garages for a period of time. The food they're being served is not fit for human consumption. It's a disgrace how the troops are being treated. You can say they should be here or not. That's a whole other conversation. The way they're being treated is shameful.
Well, I think the reason why the Senate is in session today and the House is not is because Speaker Pelosi doesn't want her members to be subjected to questions about their votes they took yesterday. I mean, when you look at what HR1 actually does, we'll talk about that more in a minute. It is concerning to say the least. Yesterday, during a hearing on the Capitol Hill riot, a top FBI official said that no firearms were confiscated that day. But the Washington Examiner's Byron York did share a Justice Department filing that appears to show at least one firearm was confiscated. What is the real story here? Because it does seem like if you listen to the testimony during the impeachment trial, it's almost as if, these were an armed army. Like ISIS almost. That's the way that a lot of these Democrats talk about these folks that breached the Capitol.
Well, the Democrats want to use this. Remember, they will not let any crisis go to waste. So if they can frame this, they want to frame this as worse as it can be framed. Now, look, it was horrible what the events that happened on January 6th were un-American. I condemn them that day. But the left is now using what happened to push through a radical agenda, just like they're using COVID to push through a radical far left agenda. And they will continue to use these events, which, again, I hate to go back to the hypocrisy, but It's so blatant, John. They'll never call that Antifa. And no one from the legacy media, you'll notice, will ask Democrats about the riots that occurred in the summer, about the Chaz zone in Seattle, about what's happening still in Portland. Mm-hmm. But every Republican gets asked about January 6th. There's a hypocrisy not only on the left, but also with our legacy media.
I mean, if President Obama called ISIS the JV team, when you read about the people that broke into the Capitol, I mean, this is like a 4-year-old T-ball team with some of these folks, especially this QAnon shaman that we're hearing so much about. But let's set that aside, guys, because I want to talk about HR1. The House last night passed one of the biggest voting rights reform bills in history. It would federalize our elections. It would put chilling limits on political speech. It would force people to fund elections that they have nothing to do with. It would make attempts to require voter ID illegal. It would greatly expand access to mail-in voting. It would limit checks on signatures and things like that. I mean, my question is, what could go right with HR1?
Well, if you're on the left, everything can go right because it's a way to cement the Democrat majority. And let's not forget, they're trying to stack the FEC, which right now is 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. They want to put an additional person on so they can cram that so they can have a Democrat majority in the FEC. A lot of people aren't paying attention to that, but that has huge ramifications.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because the Federal Elections Commission, which determines kind of the rules of the road for our elections, we talked a lot about the Democrats wanting to pack the Supreme Court, wanting to add states so they have more senators. But this is also important, Guy, because they want to pack the FEC with Democrats as well. Talk a little bit more about that.
Exactly. So what you're saying, what they want to do is they're seeing the FEC as a deadlock because, of course, it's 3-3. So instead of cooperating and working in a bipartisan way to get things done and maybe break that deadlock, like Joe Biden and the Democrats say, they want to push that aside and cram another member on the FEC. And they'll say it's going to be an independent, but we all know that independent will have left leanings. And then they'll be able to open the floodgates to all this. So it's interesting to note that the entire HR1 bill is totally designed for one purpose. That is to cement a Democrat majority. And if you look at all those measures, that's what it's aimed to do, from universal mail-in ballots to same-day voter registration, to making sure the states can't enforce voter ID laws, not to mention federal funding of elections. They want to take money that should be going to crime victims, set up a fund, and then have matches on low-dollar donations. So your taxpayer dollars, also money that should be going to crime victims, can go to support a candidate whom you don't agree with.
Think about this,
that
too.
In and of itself is wrong.
Guy, folks at home can think about this, too. They're more concerned about this bill and funding their own elections than they are about actually getting those COVID relief checks out to their voters they promised. And I think that's why this is going to backfire on them. Also, we have a question about Senator Manchin. Is he going to step up and do the right thing here?
Well, you would hope Senator Manchin would do the right thing and act as the centrist that he proclaims he wants to be. But if you see Senator Manchin doing that, there will be a move to end the filibuster. There'll be a move to push him toward the left. You just wait and see. But John, let me just say this. The reason the Democrats need HR1 is very simple. It's because their agenda is far too left from where this country is. This country is by and large a center-right country. They don't support the chaos that they're seeing at the border. They don't support eliminating women's sports, for example. They don't support the socialism that you're seeing being pushed from the far left. And they need HR1. They got lucky because they had Joe Biden, who campaigned as a moderate, but has been anything but. So they need HR1. So when the public figures out how many jobs are being lost, how far this country is being dragged to the left, they need HR1 in place as a bulwark against the American people turning on their agenda.
Right. They need this stuff because it's the only way they can implement things like the $15 minimum wage long term. Because we know it would kill the economy, killing the Keystone XL pipeline, kill jobs. They want to push this green agenda. They have to have a bigger Democratic majority to do that, because most Americans with common sense know these are killers for the economy. The former Vice President Mike Pence, writing for the Heritage Foundation, that HR1 is a unconstitutional power grab. Do you think this is ultimately headed for the Supreme Court, Guy?
I think that it is. Remember, if it gets passed, because you still have to have 60 senators unless they blow up the filibuster. But if this would get passed, there's a lot of issues. Remember, it's the Constitution that says the states have the determining factors how their elections are handled, not the federal government. So I think that there's a constitutional challenge there. There's also freedom of speech issues involved. But let's hope this doesn't pass the Senate. Let's hope that those so-called centrist Democrats will do the right thing, as you mentioned, Senator Manchin.
Well, I just worry that this is going to be the piece of legislation, because they named it HR1, that they're going to use this. It's going to fail in the Senate, and they're going to say this is why we need to blow up the filibuster. It's all kind of, you got to give the Democrats credit because they are calculated, Congressman.
They are incredibly calculating. And when you look at their agenda, we should be very concerned because they won't let any norm stand in their way, whether it be the filibuster, whether it be the states determining their voting laws, et cetera. They want to cram through this agenda. And again, it's way too far left. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for working Americans. They need HR1 to get this done.
Yeah, and again, you look at their priorities. The House also passed a bill late last night banning chokeholds and no-knock raids, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. The federal government telling local police departments what to do, even if you feel a certain way about the George Floyd case. This is not the way our system was designed. And again, it seems like they're more concerned about this than the COVID checks. Last 30 seconds to you, Congressman.
Yeah, and on that bill, remember, that bill is designed to promote community policing. It'll do the exact opposite. Police will be incentivized to stay in their patrol cars, not to be engaged in the community, which is not good. Additionally, the Democrats talk about unity and bipartisanship. We have a bill from Tim Scott in the Senate and Pete Stauber, my colleague in the House. That bill has bipartisan support. Why did they not run Tim Scott and Stauber's bill and choose to run this very partisan bill instead? It shows you what they want to do. They want to cram through their agenda, have the minority gets no rights in Congress, and they're hell-bent on accomplishing the leftist agenda that they're promoting.
You're absolutely right. Whether it's passing this COVID boondoggle through reconciliation or coming up with something like HR1 to try and blow up the filibuster, we're going to see it. It's going to continue until people wake up. Congressman Reschenthaler, great to see you as always. Thanks so much.